And welcome back. I got another upgrade video here for you. And what you see on the tailgate here is a set of 5th gen rear LED lights for a Ram truck. Now, our 2016 is what is considered 4th gen, but we have incandescent lights on here currently. Now, if you remember in a previous video, we described briefly how we changed out the front incandescent housings to be all LED driven along with HID bulbs. And we've had those in place for roughly about 3 years, three and a half years at this point. And earlier this year, we ordered these when we were ordering the other parts to do the engine upgrade. And this is now going to take the rear of the truck into the LED era. Now, there are things that you can do. You can get LED replacement bulbs and just reuse your existing housings, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what you see here are a set of custom LED tails that are put up by a company called RetroShop.us, and I'll have a link to his site in the description. They can custom color match, customize these lights in just about every way, shape, or form that you could possibly want. Rears, fronts, Dodge, Chevy, Ford, whatever the case may be. Just check out their website. If they don't have exactly what you're looking for, they have a custom light builder that you can utilize as well, or just give Jeremy a call directly and just kind of tell him what you're interested in. He'll tell you what your options are. Now, this 4th gen 2016 we've been working on came, as we said, with incandescent lights. So that kind of dictates to us what our wiring harness needed to look like. We're also going to go with amber turn signals here in the back instead of the red ones. So there's a different wiring, different adapter harnesses. This is the harness that will give us an amber turn signal in the rear instead of a red one. By default, what it does from the factory is it just flashes the rear brake. In other words, right now we would have a red turn signal in the rear. Yep. And so what you can see here is that we've had them. This is I believe, the Midnight Edition. We've had the centers, or obviously you can obviously hear we've had those blackened out. But our wiring harness here, what it's going to do is it's going to allow us to run LEDs here in the back and not get the warning that would normally happen because the body control module in the truck doesn't see the expected resistance on the circuit. So it thinks there's an issue with the bulb because it's expecting an incandescent bulb, not an LED. And that's what these little modules that you see here, it just has like a little resistor built onto the circuit board on the inside that helps keep that error message at bay. Very kind of similar to the design for the front lights. Let's see. So what this adapter does, and what I like about Jeremy's stuff, is that it doesn't require any splicing, any pinning of connectors, any splice, again, splicing, soldering, customization, things of that nature. Everything he puts out is plugs into the factory harness in some way, shape, or form. So it becomes a complete plug-and-play system. This harness plugs into the 7-pin connector that's in the bumper. It basically just acts as a Y. And I'll show that to you when we get underneath. Basically, we're going to unplug the 7-pin connector from the back of the bumper, plug this wiring harness into it, and plug it back into the bumper. So that way we still have the connector accessible in the bumper, but this is where we're splitting our wiring for our lights. So what I can see here is that it looks like this plug here is going to go to the new tails via that connector there. And it looks like we'll have a provision for, it's probably going to be on the factory harness, and that one also looks like it may be on the factory harness. So it looks like on the back of these, there's only just the one plug. Yeah, looks like just the one plug. So the other two would have to be factory harness driven. And it is labeled left and right side of this particular harness. And again, this is the harness that's going to give us an amber turn signal on the back of this truck instead of a red. If you're looking for a red turn signal, it's a different harness that you would have to order, but I strongly suggest that you check out his website. But you can see the differences in what the third and what the cargo light's going to look like. It's got this nice black trim which matches the truck, and so do these tails here. So it should look a scooch better once we're done. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to take these star screws out, get these factory lenses out of here. Once that's done, then I'll crawl underneath and I'll bring you back at that point in time, and we'll look and see what the deal with this harness here is. And I'll bring you back in a bit. Thank you much. And welcome back. So it's a T25 Torx that's on these two fasteners here in the back, and the front of it this part of it just slides off of the clips you see here. So I'm going to clean some of this dirt up before we put these lenses back in. But this is the top of the old existing factory connector. It does have a lock, a red lock on the bottom of it, so be mindful of that. And the bottom one does not. It does have a clip you just have to depress. So this is the bottom factory reverse connector, and this is the top factory brake / turn signal bulb. So it looks like what's going to happen on our harness is that this one's going to plug in at the top of the factory connector, and this little pigtail here with the single connector is going to plug into the factory backup, and then that connector there is going to plug into the back of the new lens itself. But yep, two T25s again here on this side, and then this part of it you just take and pull straight out towards the back of the truck, and it'll unseat from these clips. So I'm going to do that to the other side, and then I'll bring you back. Thank you much. And welcome back. This is the 7-pin connector that we need, aka your trailer harness connector that we're going to utilize. I did find it much easier to get to the top of this connector where this release is at by lowering the spare tire. So hopefully you're in a position where you'll be upside down. Hopefully you're in a position where your spare tire lowering winch it still works. I know in the northern states it's sometimes easier said than done because these tend to free up and rust in place and never move again. I'm a little bit further down south, so we don't get quite as bad of the temperatures and the road salt and such, but we will be spraying a liberal amount of lubricant into this cable when we go to hoist this tire back up again. But anyway, it's much easier to get to the top of this connector with the spare tire out of the way, because the spare tire is kind of like right here, and it kind of makes it hard to get to this release tab. But we should, and this release tab is a little bit crusty by looking at this. This is going to take a little bit to get this to probably cover it. Yeah, it's got some debris in it. I'm going to have to work at that a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go get some spray penetrant and get it inside this release mechanism and soak this down a little bit. Once I can get this off of here, I'll bring you back. Talk to you in a bit. And welcome back. Hopefully you can see that okay. We did get our factory connector off of our bumper connector, and you can see how this wiring harness fits in here. It's just a Y connector. I did put a little bit of dielectric grease on those connectors and on the outside barrel of both of these, just to help them kind of slide in and fit together, and also give it a little bit of corrosion prevention, so they're a little bit easier to get apart. So you can see where that one plugs back into the bumper connector. The factory harness is going to plug right into here, and hopefully this is all in frame. I can't see the screen. The factory connector will plug into here, and then we'll take our wiring and run it to our left and right hand sides here. So I'm going to go ahead and get this connected, get our wiring run, and then I'll bring you back. Thank you much. And welcome back. So we have our wiring run at this point, and before I secure anything down, I'm going to test it, but hopefully you can see it there. That's the new wiring for the new taillights. This is the Y adapter we've got plugged in, and I just kind of took the connector itself and kind of shoved it in here in the corner. You got a little bit of cubby space right here. It'll fit. It looks like it'll be well enough out of the way of the car, the spare tire. Kind of did the same thing with the wiring to left and right sides. The little control box here in the center, you can see it up here. I just got it shoved above this rail you see here, and I cleaned a small spot off so when we're ready to stick it, I can stick it to the top of this rail, because there's a nice gap between the top of this rail and the bed. Now I don't expect that piece of two-sided tape to hold that indefinitely. That's why I'll take some tie wraps to the wiring harness that's coming off of this control box, and I'll just gonna tie wrap it to the factory wiring harness that you see that also runs along this rail. And that's what I'm doing with these wiring going to the new tails as well. So to get you some light, I'm just going to zip tie it and follow the existing factory harness that you see there. To include, you can see that where it kind of runs up through a hole in the frame rail. Again, just following that factory wiring, and I'll zip tie it to that factory wiring, because obviously I know that if with the way the factory ran their wiring, if it keeps it out of the way of things that are moving and keeps it out of the way, keeps it from getting damaged, that's why I'm going to follow it. So it's pretty easy just to kind of follow what they already provided you. And so what we're going to do next is I'm going to plug in the new tails, get everything tested, and as long as it tests and we see left on left, left on left, and right on right, and everything's doing what it's supposed to do, and I'll come down here with the zip ties and get things secured a little bit better, and I'll bring you back. Thank you much. Oh, and just to kind of show that to you there, that's where the spare tire's at, relation to that connector. So where I'm going to put this box, in case you were curious, is that based on the amount of wiring that we've got to play with, this box is going to sit probably right about there. So this is the rod you use to lower your spare tire, and that's the next available hole. So maybe somewhere either right in here or somewhere just kind of right above this piece here. But again, on the top side of that frame rail, just so it kind of stays out of the way of anything else that may be up here. But again, time to do some testing before we tie it all down, and I'll bring you back. Thank you much. And welcome back. So I did a quick test and everything's working as designed. Now getting these in is a bit of a trick, as I'm finding. Let me hold this light fixture up here, get some light on the subject. This connector and here at the bottom is just a little bit thicker because of these tabs that are sticking out of the side here, and it's kind of hitting right outside this oval. So what you kind of have to do, or what I'm finding out to do, is you kind of have to, it's almost like like a Jenga puzzle, because you also have to get these side clips to hold back in, because this is what holds this side of the housing to the side of the truck. So what I'm having to do is kind of finagle this in such a way that I can start to get that bottom connector to feed through that lower hole, and then kind of shift it off to the side, get these two side pieces in, and then kind of slide everything together as one unit. It's going to be kind of hard to film this, and it's kind of hard to describe it, but like I said, you kind of have to finagle with it to get everything to line up and go in place. And as you see here, at least because of all the wiring and where this connector comes into these newer gen lights, it's easier, what I'm finding out is easier to have all the connections made behind here. And also to show you that as well, let me fish this back out of here so you can kind of see all that. There it is. There we go. There's the other one. So you see the factory harness coming up, which is that connector there for the backup lights, and that connector which went to the factory lens. you can see that their adapter plugs into that one. The white wire coming off their block here plugs into the old backup light. And then that kind of gives you the one connector that now plugs into the newer style lenses. So I'm finding it easier, as you can see there, just to kind of push all this wiring through the bottom hole, because it allows this light lens to kind of fall into place and get it in there where you can remount it. Originally, I had some of the wiring coming out of this top hole you see here, and it was just causing too much of an issue. It was easier to have everything come out the bottom, again, because it lined up easier with this one. So I'm going to fight with this a little bit, kind of get everything to line up and get it to go into those pegs, and then I'll bring you back. Thank you much. And welcome back. So you can see that I took a Dremel and I shaved down those two lines, or those two ridges you saw in the previous clip, because the lines that were here weren't used for this application, nor do I need them, because it looked like they were there to clip this connector onto something, which obviously we're not using. That's the locking part of your connection. That's the side that we need. This side had those two raised ridges, and what was happening was those ridges were sticking out enough to catch the very lip of this hole here, because I have to angle the lens to get it to hook into these two tabs. And then what would happen was it would shift the lens over enough that those two ridges there would hit up against this very outside edge. So as you can see, I just took a Dremel, a little sanding wheel, and kind of shaved that down flat, so that's no longer there. So that should allow us to get the angle on it that we need to get this to slip in place. Again, it's not a fault of the design or fault of the connector. It's just that this connector, you know, in the application that it's used for, obviously for the appropriate truck, this just had a provision in there. It looked like this had some kind of a tab on it where, you know, this connector could slide into place, maybe like that, and have some kind of hold down to it. But again, we didn't need it in this application. It was getting in our way. So I'm going to get the light back up here and see if that took care of our issue, and I'll bring you back. And this is on the driver's side. Passenger side, I was able to squirrel it in place, but the driver's side, just due to the position this was sitting on, which is this way on the driver's side, it's just too much of an interference. But I'll give this a shot and I'll bring you back. Thank you much. And welcome back. Yep, that took care of it. As you can see, just shaving that little bit off the side of that connector that was hitting in the hole, everything just slid right into place at that point. We locked in on the side, and we've got our two retaining fasteners back on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go underneath now and put some tie wraps on that wiring and secure things up a little bit. And then once I get that complete, I'll bring you back. But I wanted to mention this earlier. For that piece that has that double-sided tape on it, we're going to tape it to the top of that rail you saw earlier. Just make sure you clean that rail off. I found these to be very useful for doing that. It just gets all the crud off the top of that rail before you attempt to stick that double-sided tape on. Again, the double-sided tape is just going to be there to hold it, and I'm going to secure it with some additional tie wraps. But I'll bring you all back when that's done. I'll catch you in a bit. Later. And welcome back. So you can see we've got our wiring harness zip tied, and as we spoke about earlier, we just followed the factory harness. I may put one more zip tie right there. Let me get you some light so you can kind of see. We just followed the factory harness on both sides. We've got our center control module mounted above our rail. And you can see a zip tie that I've got looped over it again to help hold it in place. And there's our passenger side wiring. I may put one more zip tie there in the corner just to help keep that out of your way. But again, following the factory harness, just because I know the factory harness is out of the way of everything. So I got a couple more zip ties to put in, and then I'll bring you back, get you up on the tripod, and let you see these lights in action. Talk to you in a bit. Bye. Once again, there's just a shot of that Y connector, how it ties into the trailer wiring plug. Talking in a bit. Bye. And welcome back. So we got the wiring buttoned up. We got our spare tire re-raised. I did lube that cable down in case you were wondering, just to hopefully keep it in good operation. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and grab the keys and get in the cab and kind of show you what this looks like. And you're going to notice that these LEDs are considerably brighter than factory incandescents were. So you can see that's the turn signal, passenger turn signal. It's going to be your running lights. Brake lights. Four-way flashers, which you'll notice are still in the factory red, not amber. And finally, reverse lights. So I have to look at the footage and see how bad that may have swamped you out. But so to give you an idea, that's the way they look. They match the truck. They got a lot more sleek of a look to them. And in my opinion, I like those LED style in these newer gen lenses a lot better than the previous gen. But again, since we're retrofitting these to go onto a truck that wasn't originally equipped with LEDs, that was the need for the adapter cable and that little box also on that cable that you saw in order to allow the onboard body control module not to freak out when it doesn't see the resistance and stuff that it thinks that it should, because remember, it's still anticipating that we have incandescents installed now, not LEDs. So you kind of have to find avenues to work around those what could be a potential issue, or what it will think is a bulb issue but is not. The last piece that we have is just installing the cargo light that you saw earlier, with one that also matches the body color. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'll bring you back when that's done, and then that will finish this video. I'll talk to you in a bit. Bye. And welcome back. So you can see we did not change out that third eye brake light. This is going to be the replacement here. Now this replacement is still incandescent. It's more of just a cosmetic upgrade. So I may look for some LED bulbs first before I put this in. And the other reasoning is, and I even looked this up in the book, and according to the book, you just remove the 2 Phillips screws that are on either side, and that assembly should come out. And let me tell you, that assembly ain't coming out. I pulled on it pretty good in a couple of spots, and it's in there. So that tells me there must be some kind of a clip or other fastener that's on the inside that I'd have to drop down the headliner in order to access. Or, since that is meant to seal the outside elements from getting into the cab, it may even be glued in place. I really hope not. But I didn't want to break it, and since it's just a cosmetic upgrade and it gives me some time to research some potential LED replacements, I'll go ahead and look at the LED replacements, take out the incandescent bulbs, and then we'll install this. It'll also give me the time I need to research that third brake light assembly and see exactly what is holding that thing in there. Because again, let me tell you, I took the 2 screws out. Once again, per the manual, that should just come out, and it's not. And I don't want to break it trying to get it out of there. So with that being said, we'll cut it at this point. We got the main meat done that we meant to have done, which is getting at least our rear tails in place. And like I said, once I can get some LED bulbs in for this replacement fixture, then we'll come back and we'll address this after I've had more time to, again, look at exactly how that piece comes out. But with that being said, I'll cut it at a video at this point, and I'll bring you back for the next one. Thank you much. Oh, and one final thing. I said I was going to start doing this, and I have. At the end of the videos, I have started putting the subscribe to this channel button. I'm not going to be, once again, I'm not going to be one of those individuals that ask you to like, comment, and subscribe at the beginning of the videos. I don't like doing that. I will save it for the end of the video. If you've made it to the end of this video and you find the content useful, please click that subscribe button. We're hovering right about 662 subscribers as of this video, and we're trying to grow the channel. We're trying to get to that first milestone of 1,000 subs. That will allow us to do some things to the channel to help support the channel. And also, the more that we can support this channel, the more it'll help fund other projects like this in the future, like, you know, upgrading the light kits, you know, possibly putting a lift kit on this truck. I've got plans where I want to get a 1500 truck in here with a 5.7 and do very similar upgrades to it. So that's kind of some of the things I'm thinking about bringing in the pipeline, as well as continuing with the solar videos and continuing to expand that system, so we do more and more on solar and less on the grid power. But with that being said, that's enough rambling. I will cut it at a video at this point, and I will chat everyone later. Thank you. Okay, so one quick note, wanted to wrap this one up. I did search that really quick here on the net, and from what I can find, it kind of confirmed my suspicions, since that does also need to seal the outside elements from getting into the cab. It appears it's got that same butylene type sealant that windshields and exterior windows, especially like windshields and rear windows, would have. So what we're going to need to do in order to change that out is just to kind of cut through that sealant to get that out of there, and then reseal it when it's done. Now, it does come with a kind of a foam seal on it, but I'm thinking if they went through the trouble of putting a butylene, if that's what that is, in there, then what we'll need to do is get a hold of some of that sealant material before we attempt to take that out and put the replacement in there, because it does rain quite a bit here, especially in the springtime, and the last thing I want is to turn the inside of my cab into a fishbowl. And with that being said, I'm going to do a little bit more research on that, get in the proper sealant and the tools necessary to take that light out, and then when we have all that, we'll make a separate video of it. But I didn't want to leave you hanging on that. Just want to let you know that that's what I was able to find out. But I'll talk to you later. Thank you much. Bye.